The Intermediate Life Cycle Courses. Continual Service Improvement. Lesson 14. Supporting Methods and Techniques. Welcome to Lesson 14. In this lesson, we're going to cover process methods and techniques from across the life cycle that can support continual service improvement. We'll study techniques from availability management, capacity management, IT service continuity management, problem management, change, release, and deployment management, knowledge management. The information in this lesson relates to the syllabus section CSI 04. Remember, it's strongly recommended that you carry out further reading in the Continual Service Improvement core volume as part of your exam preparation. You can use the syllabus document to identify the appropriate areas for self-study. We have previously looked at interfaces between continual service improvement and the service lifecycle at a high level. We have also looked at interfaces at the process level, including looking at key processes such as service level management. Now we're going to look at what methods and techniques from other processes can be used by continual service improvement. Continual service improvement makes extensive use of methods and practices found in ITIL processes throughout the service lifecycle. The use of their outputs in the form of flows, matrices, statistics, or analysis reports provide valuable insight into a service's design and operation. This information, combined with new business requirements, technology specifications, IT capabilities, budgets, trends, and possibly legislation, is vital to continual service improvement. This is because it determines what needs to be improved. If you're starting a continual service improvement implementation in your organization, you are unlikely to be starting with nothing. Research carefully what other processes are already in existence, as you may find a wealth of information that can support you in your new role. Continual service improvement should not be duplicating reports and metrics already produced in other areas. Rather, it should be coordinating this information. Okay, let's start by looking at availability management and continual service improvement. Availability management's methods are part of the measuring, gathering, processing, and analyzing activities. This information is provided to continual service improvement in the form of a report or a presentation. Availability management provides IT with the business and user perspective of deficiencies in the infrastructure and their impact. It also identifies deficiencies in any underpinning processes and procedures. All of this is valuable information to continual service improvement. Availability management plays an important role in helping the IT support organization recognize where they can add value by exploiting technical skills and competencies in an availability context. The information this provides is made available to continual service improvement through the Availability Management Information System. We're going to look at 5 availability techniques that can support continual service improvement. Component failure impact analysis, fault tree analysis, service failure analysis, technical observation, and the expanded incident lifecycle. The first technique we'll study is component failure impact analysis. This technique identifies single points of failure and IT services that are at risk from the failure of a configuration item. It can also be used to assess the existence and validity of recovery procedures for the selected configuration items. When a single point of failure is identified, the information is provided to continual service improvement. This information, combined with business requirements, will enable continual service improvement to make recommendations on how to address the failure. The second availability management technique to look at is fault tree analysis. This is a technique that is used to determine the chain of events that causes a disruption of IT services. The output from this technique indicates which part of the infrastructure, process, or service was responsible for the service disruption. This information, combined with business requirements, enables continual service improvement to make recommendations about how to address the fault. The next availability management technique that supports continual service improvement by identifying improvement opportunities is service failure analysis. This technique provides a structured approach to identifying end-to-end availability improvement opportunities that deliver benefits to the user. The activities are closely aligned with those of problem management and may be performed jointly by problem and availability management. Service failure analysis identifies the business impact of an outage of a service, system, or process. Again, the information allows continual service improvement to make recommendations about how to address improvement opportunities. The next availability management technique is technical observation. This is a title for a prearranged gathering of specialist technical support staff from within IT support. The technical observation is initiated to focus on specific aspects of IT availability. It is there to monitor events in real time, with the specific aim of identifying improvement opportunities within the current IT infrastructure. Technical observation creates an environment in which to identify improvement opportunities. The group gathers, processes, and analyzes information about the situation. By its nature, technical observation is normally reactive and takes place to deal with an emergency. However, it can be used proactively too, perhaps at the launch of a new service. Finally, in our look at availability management techniques, there is the expanded incident lifecycle, shown on screen. This is a technique to help with the technical analysis of incidents affecting the availability of components and IT services. It consists of two parts: the time to restore service or downtime, and the time between failures, which could be referred to as uptime. There are many stages in the life cycle of an incident, such as diagnosis, repair, restoration, and recovery of the service. If we can speed up any part of these stages, the overall effect will be to resolve the incident more quickly. Downtime will be reduced and uptime increased. By analyzing each stage of an incident life cycle, we can identify improvement opportunities. Let's move on now and look at our next process, capacity management. When we look at services from a capacity perspective, we can split them into three groups: new services to meet business requirements, existing services that need modification, and old services that are obsolete. Each of these groups has a different impact on capacity, either releasing or consuming capacity. It is the role of capacity management to ensure sufficient hardware, software, and personnel resources are in place to support services and changes to services. Their goal is to ensure that existing and future business capacity and performance requirements are fulfilled in a cost-effective way. The capacity management process can play an important role in helping the IT support organization recognize where they can add value. This is by exploiting their technical skills and competencies in a capacity context. The process can also assist continual service improvement in identifying improvement opportunities related to capacity. The information provided by capacity management is made available to continual service improvement through the Capacity Management Information System. Capacity management has three sub-processes that we're going to study: business capacity management, service capacity management, and component capacity management. Let's start with business capacity management. The objective of business capacity management is to ensure that future business requirements for IT services are considered and understood. It makes sure that sufficient capacity to support services is planned and implemented in an appropriate timescale. Business capacity management supports continual service improvement by helping it to answer the "what do we need" question. Business requirements are understood by looking at the service level requirements for a service and then translated into capacity terms. Any potential shortfall can be highlighted to continual service improvement for review and analysis. The objective of service capacity management is to identify and understand IT services, including their use of resource, working patterns, and any peaks and troughs of demand. This sub-process ensures that services can and do meet their service level agreement targets. The focus is on managing service performance and preempting difficulties wherever possible using a proactive approach. Again, information from service capacity management helps continual service improvement to address the "what do we need" question. High-level business requirements can be analyzed in more detail from the individual service level agreement and service level requirement perspectives. The last capacity management sub-process is component capacity management. The objective of component capacity management is to identify and understand the capacity and utilization of each of the components of the IT infrastructure. This is to ensure the optimum use of current hardware and software resources in order to achieve and maintain the agreed service levels. All hardware components and many software components in the IT infrastructure have a finite capacity, which, when exceeded, has the potential to cause performance problems. Successful component capacity management will identify difficulties wherever possible and put corrective action in place. Component capacity management is primarily proactive, but may also need to be reactive on occasion. Reactive situations may arise from the lack of resources or inefficient use of resources. Again, this will be highlighted to continual service improvement. Continual service improvement will use information from all three capacity management sub-processes to achieve its goals. Immediate areas for improvement need to be identified and addressed, but continual service improvement will also need to receive information about planned business growth to be able to proactively address any potential future lack of capacity. Next up, we're going to study workload management, another technique of capacity management. This technique can be defined as understanding which customers use what service, understanding when customers use the service, understanding how customers use the service, and how use of the service impacts the performance of single or multiple systems and/or components that make up a service. Information from workload management allows capacity management to understand patterns of usage and plan and implement the appropriate amount of capacity to support customers' needs. Again, this is all useful input for continual service improvement when identifying improvement opportunities. While we are still looking at capacity management and how it supports continual service improvement, we need to consider demand management. Demand management is often associated with influencing end users' behavior. By influencing end user behavior, an organization can change the workload of a service, improving the performance of components that support IT services. Using demand management can be an effective way of improving services without investing a lot of money. Continual service improvement needs to review demand management policies to ensure that they are still effective. This is because a policy that was relevant a couple of years ago may not be workable or useful today. Finally, we need to look at the iterative capacity management activities that support continual service improvement. We'll study trend analysis and modeling, including analytical, simulation, and baseline modeling. Let's start with trend analysis. This is carried out on the resource utilization and service performance information collected by the service and component capacity management subprocesses. The results show the usage of a particular resource over a period of time and how it can be expected to change in the future. Trend analysis outputs are used by both continual service improvement and problem management to identify improvement opportunities. Estimates of future resource usage can be used as part of a business case for investment or as a trigger for further demand management activities. Finally, we need to study the different modeling elements of capacity management. Modeling can range from making estimates based on experience and current resource utilization information to pilot studies, prototypes, and full-scale benchmarks. Continual service improvement makes use of the information provided by the capacity management modeling activity to predict the behavior of service improvements before the improvement is actually done. This may prevent costly implementations or problems after implementation. The first type of modeling is analytical modeling. This uses mathematical techniques like queuing theory to calculate response times for a system or service. Analytical models are less resource-intensive than simulations, but can also be less accurate. The models need to be kept up to date to be effective. Simulation modeling is used to model discrete events against a hardware configuration. For example, if we double the number of invoices we produce, what happens to our billing system? These models can be very accurate, but are time-consuming and costly to develop and manage. Typically, they will be used for business-critical systems where a higher level of accuracy is needed. Baseline models are the final area we need to address for capacity management. A baseline model reflects the current state. Predictions can be made against the baseline and will be more accurate if the baseline truly reflects our current state. Modeling helps continual service improvement to answer what-if questions. Our next process is IT Service Continuity Management. Like any change to IT services, continual service improvement initiatives need to be integrated with IT Service Continuity Management. Any change needs to be assessed for impact to the continuity plan. This is why it is important for all service improvement plans to go through change management to allow IT Service Continuity Management to have an opportunity to assess the change. Business continuity management is concerned with managing risks to ensure that an organization can continue operating to a predetermined minimum level. The underpinning IT process involves reducing the risk to an acceptable level and planning for the recovery of business processes should a risk materialize and disruption to the business occur. IT Service Continuity Management underpins business continuity management. It allows an IT organization to identify, assess, and take responsibility for managing its risks, which enables it to better understand the environment in which it operates. ITSCM allows an organization to decide which risks it wishes to counteract and act positively to protect the interests of all stakeholders. Stakeholders include staff, customers, shareholders, third parties, and creditors. Continual service improvement can complement this activity and help to deliver business benefit. Continual service improvement complements ITSCM in a number of ways, as you can see on screen here. Firstly, it can identify weaknesses in services that may lead to ITSCM plans being invoked. These can then be prioritized and managed as part of a service improvement plan. CSI can also provide a holistic view to support ITSCM. For example, an uninterruptible power supply installed for one service may be able to support additional services, reducing risk across the organization. Within IT Service Continuity Management, we also need to consider risk management. Every organization manages its risk, but not always in a way that is visible, repeatable, and consistently applied to support decision-making. Risk management processes need to be cyclical, reviewing the suitability of previous actions. They also need to reassess risks in the light of changing circumstances. Risks are likely to be managed through a risk register. While risk management is primarily conducted during the design and transition stages of the service lifecycle, continual service improvement processes will assess the results of risk management activities. This is to identify service improvements through risk mitigation, elimination, and management. Risk management has two distinct phases. The first is analysis, concerned with gathering information about exposure to risk so that the organization can make appropriate decisions and manage risk appropriately. This involves the identification and assessment of the level of risk. Risk is calculated from the assessed values of assets, and then the threats and vulnerability levels of the assets. The second phase of risk management is the actual management of identified risks. This involves having processes in place to monitor risks and access to reliable and up-to-date information about risks. Management ensures that the right balance of control is in place to deal with those risks, and that the decision-making processes are supported by a framework of risk analysis and evaluation. Risk management also involves the identification, selection, and adoption of countermeasures. These countermeasures will be justified by the potential impact upon services if failure occurs, and the reduction of risks to an acceptable level. Effective management of risk helps to improve performance by contributing to increased certainty and fewer surprises, better service delivery, more effective management of change, and more efficient use of resources. Risk management also contributes to improved performance in the ways you can see here. Better management at all levels through improved decision-making, reducing waste and fraud, and better value for money, innovation, and the management of any contingent and maintenance activities. Management of risk should be carried out in the wider context of safety concerns, security, and business continuity, as you can see here. Health and safety policy and practice is concerned with ensuring that the workplace is a safe environment. Security is concerned with protecting the organization's assets, including information, buildings, and so on. And business continuity is concerned with ensuring that the organization could continue to operate in the event of a disaster, such as a loss of service, flood, or fire damage. We also need to incorporate the business perspective on risk management. The attitude of the business focuses on assessing vulnerabilities in supplier arrangements, which could pose threats to any aspect of the business, including customer satisfaction, brand image, market share, share price, profitability, and regulatory impacts or penalties, where applicable. For example, an outsourced supplier may come with more risks than an internal supplier. If a supplier fails, our customer will still hold us as the service provider accountable. Blaming a supplier does not impress customers or internal users affected by a service failure. We also need to consider risk profiles and responsibilities. Both the organization and the supplier must maintain their own risk profiles covering their internal assets and identifying those which could affect the sourcing relationship. Each must identify owners for risks. Do you involve your suppliers in risk assessments? By doing so, an organization may gain valuable insights into how best to mitigate risks, as well as improving the coverage of the assessment. Risk assessments typically consider threats which may exploit vulnerabilities to impact the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of one or more assets. The scope of a risk assessment should cover identification of risks, including threats and vulnerabilities, target, such as the assets under threat, impact of risks, from a qualitative and quantitative perspective, probability of occurrence, and possible mitigating actions or controls. It should also include identification of stakeholders who are accountable for the risk and responsible for selecting an appropriate action, responsibility for implementing selected actions or controls, choice of actions or controls based on evaluation of impact versus cost of action or control. You can see from what we've studied that risk management will be an essential input to continual service improvement. As we mentioned, risk management is primarily conducted during the design and transition stages of the service lifecycle. Continual service improvement will assess the results of risk management activities to identify service improvements through risk mitigation, elimination, and management throughout the whole service lifecycle. The next process we should consider alongside continual service improvement is that of problem management. There are close synergies between continual service improvement and problem management. Both are analytical and are tasked with making improvements. Problem management aims to identify and permanently remove errors that impact services from the infrastructure. This directly supports the continual service improvement activities of identifying and implementing service improvements. Problem management also supports continual service improvement activities through trend analysis and the targeting of preventive action. Problem management activities are generally conducted within the scope of service operation on live services. Continual service improvement must take an active role in the proactive aspects of problem management to identify and recommend changes that will result in service improvements. Next, let's move on and look at the relationships between continual service improvement and change and release and deployment management. Firstly, let's consider the post-implementation review. As part of change management, a post-implementation review is carried out on implemented changes. Continual service improvement can request a review on all improvement-related changes. Continual service improvement will participate in any post-implementation review on changes that were implemented to improve a service. This is to identify if the change actually improved the service or if there are still some issues. If a change, once implemented, fails to improve the service as desired, then continual service improvement will need to look at why this happened. They can then reassess how the improvement can actually be delivered. As we have mentioned already, all continual service improvement activities will fall under the scope of change, release, and deployment management. The goal of continual service improvement is to identify and implement improvement activities on IT services that support the business processes and IT service management processes. Once continual service improvement has come up with a recommendation for improvement, a request for change is submitted. The proposed change is then scheduled as part of a release, managed by Release and Deployment Management. We have been looking at other IT service management processes and how continual service improvement can use their inputs. The last process we will look at in this lesson is knowledge management. This is one of the essential processes that support continual service improvement. An organization has to gather knowledge and analyze it in order to look for trends in service level achievements and the results and output of service management processes. This is used to determine what service improvement is needed. Knowledge management has evolved rapidly, driven by the factors you can see here. An increase in the rate of change in industry and market landscapes, as barriers to entry have decreased and new opportunities opened up. An increase in employee turnover, as it has become more socially acceptable and often beneficial to change companies during a career to develop and share new experiences and perspectives. an increase in access to information via the Internet, and a more open global economy. And greater market competition forcing company employees to share knowledge between departments and subsidiaries. Effective knowledge management delivers the benefits you can see here. Enhances the organization's effectiveness through better decision-making, enabled by having the right information at the right time, and facilitating enterprise learning through the exchange and development of ideas and individuals. Enhances customer and supplier relationships through sharing information and services to expand capabilities through collaborative efforts. And improving business processes, sharing lessons learned, results, and best practices across the organization. To be successful, knowledge management relies on two items being in place. An open culture, where knowledge, best practices, and lessons learned are shared across the organization, and individuals are rewarded for sharing. And infrastructure to support knowledge management. Infrastructure may be a technical application or system which allows individuals to conduct online or self-paced training. It may be a process or knowledge-sharing activities designed to bring people together to discuss best practices or lessons learned. This diagram shows the many sources of knowledge. It is all stored in the Service Knowledge Management System. Throughout a continual service improvement initiative, a lot of experience and information is acquired. This cannot be wasted and should be gathered, organized, and accessible. To ensure the ongoing success of the program, knowledge management techniques must be applied, and continual service improvement information should be managed, stored, and shared by the knowledge management process. In this lesson, we've studied other service management processes and how they can support continual service improvement. Outputs from these processes may be generated by methods and techniques we have looked at. These outputs become inputs to continual service improvement. Each organization must choose what methods and techniques work best for them. Your choice of methods and techniques may include a mix of the techniques we've studied, perhaps influenced by what already exists in your organization. Continual service improvement relies on the activities of all other service management processes. The incident, problem, availability, and capacity management processes can provide particular value to continual service improvement. Service level management plays a key role, and most organizations will be hard-pressed to have an effective continual service improvement program without some form of service level management in place. Without service level management, we will find it much more difficult to understand customer requirements and trends in performance. You've completed Lesson 14, Supporting Methods and Techniques. We've looked at how other service management processes can support continual service improvement. These processes are discussed in more detail in the Service Design, Service Transition, and Service Operation core volumes. If these are relevant to your role, you may wish to do further reading around them. In Lesson 15, we'll look at organizing for continual service improvement.